Welcome back to Howling Around. Today, I want to talk a little bit about first date locations that you should avoid at, well, basically any cost if you can, because they ruin your chances to have a successful first date. Unless you are a seasoned dater and you know what you're doing. And let's be honest, many of us, including myself, half of the time, we don't really know what the hell is going on. So, first of all, a first date is where you discover whether there is attraction between you and the woman or between you and another guy or whatever it is that you're dating. It's not a thing, an event that or where you just sit silently and hoping attraction just appears, chemistry just magically shows up. And yet, men constantly pick locations that block the possibilities for conversation. Locations that stiffen the energy, that destroy your chances or moments to be flirtatious with a woman. And basically make the date feel more like a performance than a thing where you build connection. And today I want to break down two of the most common first date choices men think are romantic, but in reality, they ruin your chances, I would even say drastically. So, the first bad location is the movie theater. Movies feel like a good idea. It's something that most of us, grew up on. We grew up when we were younger. When you take your first girlfriend out, you take her to the movies. That's how it all starts. That is basically the first date for probably any guy in the world. And movies feel very default. They feel classic and easy. But here's the truth. During during watching a movie, you can't talk. You need to shut up. You can't flirt because you can't talk. You can't flirt because you're not looking at her, you're looking at the screen. You can't connect because you can't flirt, you can't talk, you can't be touchy-feely. So basically, it's just 2 hours sitting in silence, staring forward, sharing an experience without actually sharing the experience, together, sharing each other. A first date is where you should learn, does her humor match mine? Can she hold a conversation? Can we hold a conversation? Is there, you know, some banter going on? Is the vibe playful? Is the vibe really awkward? You can't get those answers in a cinema seat. A movie gives you proximity, but it eliminates intimacy, and you need intimacy. It's a date where attraction has no oxygen to grow. For later dates, sure, go watch a movie. But I think for the first 4 to 5 dates, maybe don't do movies. First dates need space to breathe. So watching a movie, bad idea. Bad location number two would be a restaurant, aka going for a fancy dinner. Yes, it feels impressive. It feels chivalrous. It feels like a power play. It feels like, hey, look at me. I'm buying you dinner. I'm being chivalrous. I'm being a gentleman. But in reality, you're just, throwing your chances out the window. You're just being an asshole to yourself. That's what you're doing, really. It puts, first of all, unnecessary pressure on the both of you. You know, You're seated face to face. It feels like a business meeting. During a date, small tip, sit next to each other. If you like each other, there's a chance to be touchy-feely if you want to. You know, if you order a full meal, you're locked in. You can't leave. A first date in a restaurant feels really formal, somewhat stiff, and there's some expectations going on. Expensive dinner, high stakes, we want some performance. And, Often women might even think, well, he's paying dinner, he's expecting me, well, to put out. So there's unnecessary pressure on you as the guy because, you're paying for everything. So you want the date to be really, really, really well, want it to be really good. And for the women, they're thinking, well, he's taking me to a fancy dinner. Well, he's expecting me, to do certain things, maybe. So, not a good idea, really. A first date should be light, it should be flexible and fluffy. It shouldn't be something you need to endure if there is no spark. Because if you're on a date and you're sitting there for dinner, let's say dinner takes what, like an hour, hour and a half minimum, and you walk in, and within the first 2 minutes, you decide, well, I don't like this woman. I want to go home. I want to play Xbox. Well, you can't. You made reservations, you paid, so now you got to sit there. Now you got to endure the date and just hope that at least the conversation is going to be all right. And also, going for dinner, it is an expensive hobby. Dinners are expensive, let's be honest. Let's say you're spending 50 euros, $50 per person minimum. You know, if you go on a few dates a month or even a week, then that's going to add up to a serious number. And at the end of the at the end of the year, you might have had a lot of dinners, but possibly still no girlfriend. You're going to be resentful for all those dinners, all that money, you know, spent for what? Nothing. So don't do that. It's really a silly idea. So it's expensive, you can't leave, you're locked in, too much pressure. And still us guys, we still do it, movie theaters and dinner. Do something different. Now, let me tell you why it really is a stupid idea to do something together without actually doing something. So I met this girl on Bumble, I think it's like 5 or 6 weeks ago, maybe seven, well, something like that. And I wanted to take her out for coffee because that is my default. But she said, you know what? I want to go to this concert and I'll even pay the tickets for you. You want to come with me as a first date? I was very hesitant because I know usually that is not a good idea. I haven't had any good experiences doing so. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, well, I got to be optimistic. I got to be open minded. I can't just start off with, no, I don't want to do that. So I thought, let's be positive here. Let's be light and fluffy. And yeah, sure, I'll go with you. So I drive for an hour to the venue. We get there. We exchange greetings. Hi, hi, how are you? I'm fine. You too? Yeah, long drive? Sure. Okay, let's sit down. And the concert starts. I mean, venue was kind of cool. The atmosphere, nice. So, great idea on paper, yes? Sure. But there was one big problem. We sat down, the concert started, and it lasted for, I don't know, like an hour and a half, 2 hours. So before we ever got to actually talk, we just sat there like two strangers watching a concert. So we walked in as strangers, sat down in silence, no conversation, just music, nothing. So for 2 hours, we had no opportunity to get to know each other, to build momentum, or to even feel out if there's any basic chemistry. And when the concert finally ended, that's when the real date began. But by then, we'd already lost the opener, the excitement, the sense of discovery, the energy was flat. Why? Well, we sat down for 2 hours. We were, well, tired from the concert. We both were like, yeah, I really want to go home, to be honest. We didn't. We said, well, let's go grab drinks, see if we actually like each other. And she said before we even went on this date, well, let's do the concert. If we don't have anything to talk about on the date, we can talk about the concert, which is really a stupid thing because if I sit down with you on a date and we can't have a conversation, I'll just go home. I don't need to talk about stuff. I don't need to make things up. It's obvious that we can't hold a conversation. This isn't going to work. I'm going home. So we went for drinks. And guess what? We didn't mention the concert even once. Not on our walk to the bar, not at the bar, not on the way to the car. Didn't come up once. So, how about that? It just felt like a second date with a stranger. It didn't feel like a first date with possibilities. And that's when I realized the thing that I know, which is a first date shouldn't begin after, an experience or an event ends. The date is the event, the date is the connection. So you would say it's a beautiful experience, but in the wrong context. So don't do that. What works better? Well, a first date should be simple. It should be at a place where it's conversation friendly. A loud bar isn't a good idea either. It should be at a place where you can hold a conversation without yelling. You know, it should be easy to exit. So if you don't like each other, you can just politely say, well, I'm going home. Or it should be a location where you can extend if you like each other. It should be light and playful. And it should be more about exploration than it should be about performing. Some great examples to pick from: grab drinks in a relaxed bar, grab coffee and go for a walk, go to an art gallery or a museum. You can watch stuff, you can talk about the stuff if you don't know what to say. You have an experience together, you build chemistry, you can build attraction. During the summertime, go grab ice cream and, go for a stroll through the city. Play mini golf, go to a market, flea market, something like that. Those are all better ideas than go to the movies or have a sit down dinner. And guess what? If the chemistry is good, you can extend those dates. You can go from having drinks in a bar to, well, let's go grab dinner at that bistro or let's go grab dinner at that restaurant. I can go from, hey, the art gallery was fun, it was wild. I like you, you like me. You want to go grab lunch. You can do that. You can always upgrade. Or you can say, well, I don't like it. I'm going home. You're not trapped. So you don't need a spectacle. You need a space to connect. We always, well, always, most men forget that. You don't need all the fanciness. You just need a place, a space where the two of you can connect. So skip the 2 hour silence, skip the formal table interviews, and pick something that lets you both be human. The best first dates aren't expensive or impressive. I can testify to that from personal experience. They're personal, they're warm, they're, real. If the conversation flows, if the eyes meet, if the laughter rises, a second date will be effortless. You can always go to the cinema. So, that being said, don't go to the movies on a first date and don't do sit down dinners. Pick anything but that. I hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.